Hello and welcome back to another exciting week in real estate. This week I'm going to get into how this is the new 1990s and how this recent video I've found and the data to back it up really confirms that. But first, a message from my competitors.
What's his name? Luke and that other guy, John Flynn.
Flynn,
who won't come on the show.
Won't come on the show.
They're super bare. Like they like I saw him the other day.
They almost gloat in it though. Like who's buying a house from John Flynn? Honestly,
like,
how does that work?
He was like the plan of the reset is almost there, you know. And I'm just like, it's been like years since you've been talking about the same thing, right? So when those guys turn, I'm buying. All right, that's it. Anybody else don't listen to, including myself. We don't know what we're talking about.
Okay, so there you have it. That's what my competitors think of me. I've never met these guys. I've never talked to them on the phone, but I am going to go on their show this Thursday, and it'll probably be aired next week sometime. And yeah, if there's any questions or comments or anything you want me to ask these guys, let me know, but I'm sure it will be an interesting conversation. So now before I get into this exciting video from the 90s, let's just check out some other recent posts that caught my attention this week. And here we have from Robert Benzie, again, talking about the property tax hike in Toronto. 2023, tax hike 7%. 2024, tax hike 9.5%. 2025, proposed property tax hike of 6.9%. That means the equivalent of 24% increase since 2023. That's a big increase. And from globalnews.ca, posted by Daniel Foch, Bank of Canada rate cut in doubt after strong December jobs report. So yeah, we got a big December report, lots of public sector jobs in there, of course. The government's hiring, propping up the numbers, but now the Bank of Canada is going to have to reconsider their next rate cut. So this next one was pretty interesting. I'm going to explain it here in a second after I read what John Pasalis had to say when he posted this. Canada has become a country that prioritizes investment in houses above anything else. Houses in Canada are no longer just shelter. They are a business. The transition to housing as lucrative financial investment, is why young people can't afford a home of their own. And he goes on to talk about more stuff, but I want to talk about this chart here. So this is the investment in dwellings versus intellectual property products. And it's the percentage point difference. So how much more are Canadians or these countries investing in real estate over intellectual property products? And if you can correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but like an intellectual property would be, say, in the States, Tesla or Apple Macintosh, but Apple, that's the Apple Macintosh in my background this week. And the products, that's the intellectual property, and the products are, of course, those computers or the Tesla cars and stuff. So how much does each country invest, the people invest in these kind of things as compared to real estate? So let's look at this here. Canada, and this is the difference between them. So Canada invests 25.7% more in real estate than they do in all of these IPPs, they call them. And next you have Mexico. So I guess, I don't know if Mexico has a big bubble. New Zealand, it goes down the list. United States, we're going to look for the United States here because they are a really big economy, obviously. And sorry, yeah, the United States down near the bottom there. So United States, they are investing more in their own products and intellectual property than they are in real estate. So, and I'd say that's a good thing, right? Because that creates jobs, it creates trade. Real estate just sits there and becomes a bubble, as you see in Canada. So yeah, Canada at the top of the list for investing in real estate that does nothing and not investing in other things. Another one here from Daniel Foch. He just put it out this morning, I believe, from one of the biggest renovators in Hamilton area. Put out an ad for skilled general labor. Over 178 resumes received in just 24 hours. Wow, that's pretty unheard of. And it just goes to show you how many people are out there looking for jobs right now. Okay, so the rest of my video is going to be based off of this video and referencing this video and the times in the 90s when, of course, when the housing downturn happened after the late 80s boom. But Shazi posted this one here. He's got some really great content. If you want to follow him, I see his stuff every day, and I don't know where he gets it, but he gets some really good posts on here. So the 90s housing crash in Canada was a grim and unsettling time. A CBC documentary from 1995 captured the hopelessness. Housing starts plummeted to record lows. Interest rates were slashed, yet it didn't matter. Public confidence was shattered. No one wanted to buy, and the market spiraled into darkness. A stark reminder of how fragile the economy can be when fear takes over. And that's what I guess people don't understand. They think, oh, you know, this can happen, that can happen. Well, when fear takes over and the sentiment changes, it doesn't matter how low the interest rates are and how low the house prices are. It's just the sentiment's not there. It's not going to happen. But anyway, let's watch this video from the CBC back when they were like the most reputable news organization in Canada. And Peter Mansbridge here, I can't really say a bad thing about him. He was gone long before all this BS took over with these, you know, paid media shills that we have these days. But yeah, great reporting back then, and well worth the watch here. So let's watch this, about 2 minutes long, and again, I'm going to get into it right after. A very interesting video.
Things seem to be going from bad to worse in Canada's troubled housing industry. New figures out tonight show last month was the slowest month for house construction in 13 years. The CBC's Neil MacDonald now on the slump that just won't end.
It would be hard to imagine better conditions for buying a home. Prices in most parts of Canada have been falling steadily since the late 1980s. There are plenty of homes from which to choose, and mortgages are cheap.
Feeling hopeful.
So, what does the spokesman for Canada's home builders have to say about the year that just ended?
It was the lowest level of activity since the Second World War. We're now going into 1996, and we have no reason to believe that it will be any better in 1996. So we're very, very firmly in recession.
In fact, January was the worst month in 13 years. Across Canada, there were tremendous drops from a year ago. Housing starts in Manitoba, for instance, dropped 75%. Quebec, 62%. British Columbia was down 53%, and even in Ontario, where the industry had its greatest hopes for a revival, home building decreased 5%. Why? Why such gloom, even with interest rates as low as they are?
That you can bring interest rates down as low as you want, but at a particular point in time, unless people feel confident about their employment, they're not about to purchase what is known as a big-ticket item.
This government has been jerking us around.
And nowadays, confidence is scarce. Look, for example, at public servants. Government is the biggest employer in Canada, and government right now is on a starvation diet. Ontario public servants, faced with losing 1 job in 4, are contemplating a strike. These people are not thinking about buying a home.
It's almost like a guaranteed job. You think, hey, this is great. The next thing you know, you're going on strike, no pay or whatever, and baby on the way, like first time baby, and I'm real scared.
And then there's Quebec, where 51% of the people who voted in last fall's referendum had the living daylights scared out of them. Hardly a climate for carefree spending either. Actually, the housing market right now is a classic economic paradox. Uncertainty stifles spending, which then depresses the economy, which then justifies the original uncertainty. Neil MacDonald, CBC News, Ottawa.
So yeah, we're not actually at this point yet. They had their peak in '89. We had our peak in 2022. It's only, what, 2-3 years later, and well, almost 3 years actually now at this point. And this was 5 to 6 years after their peak. So yeah, we're going to do some comparisons in a minute, but that fear and that uncertainty that happens, people don't understand that it kills markets, right? People, they're not going to be speculating on real estate when they're worried about having a job. And we're entering those times now, but we're going to look at some timelines in a second. Now, starting with our first comparison, this was last year this news came out, but 1 in 4 employed Canadians now work for the government. So as, again, looking back to the 1990s, it was the public sector. There was a lot of public sector workers, but they were worried about their jobs due to layoffs, due to strikes and things like that. But again, big public sector employees back then, and very similar to nowadays. All right, so now we're going to put this into perspective with some numbers here. So this is the Bank of Canada overnight rate. In December 1995, I think it was about 5.6% or something. So they had come from this all-time high back. Look at like after 1980, 1982 there, all the way to the left. But look at January 1st, 1990, that line there. You see right after that, they stopped hiking and they started to drop rates in, I think it was May 1990. They started dropping rates. So let's go on here. And you'll see the next one. We have May 1990 is when they started to cut rates, and they didn't stop until August 1992. And of course, they had to raise rates, drop them back down, raise them back up. And this is what people don't realize. This is a long, drawn-out process, this cycle, because of these inflated prices in real estate and all other assets too. So yeah, it took 2 years plus for them to reach the bottom of their first cutting cycle. Then they raised again. Then they went even lower. So yeah, it's a long process. We've been cutting right now for 8 months in Canada. It seems like it's shorter, but it's been 8 months since that first cut in June 2024. Now let's look at some sale prices and compare them to then. So there's 1989 when the market peaked. Of course, the video referenced that too. And 1995, so 6 years later, and prices weren't done declining. Now these don't look like big declines in comparison to today, but if we just cut this chart off at say 2000, these would be big declines. You'd see the scale on the chart at that point. But yeah, so we had 6 years. So we've been, 3 years, almost 3. We've been 35 months right now, and I think I'll get into this in my next chart here. Yeah, here we are, 35 months since prices peaked, and that would put us at January 1992 in comparison. So 1989 to 1992. Now, one thing I do want to mention is Canada waited too long this time to cut rates, or to increase rates, and they should have started increasing them when inflation started taking off in 2021. And I've mentioned this before, but they waited too long. So this scale, we're a little bit behind where we should be in our housing correction, I guess I should say. And so anyway, we are here 35 months since prices peaked, and so we're about January 1992 right now when you look at the prices here, and when you're looking at the rates. So yeah, we are here, let me move my face there, we are here 8 months since the first cut. So yeah, look, we still have a long way to go with cuts. Maybe it's a long time, maybe it's a long way, who knows. They say they're going to stop at some mid-range neutral rate, but I don't know. I'll believe that when I see it. They may have to go down further to stimulate the economy, but we'll see. So yeah, this is where we are now when we're looking at rate cuts. So 1991 for rate cuts, 1992 for the prices. So we're in that range, and this video was made in 1995, and look at how depressed it was at that point. So again, this is a long road ahead of us, I think, is my message today. So that video was a lot about the housing completions, housing starts, and housing construction, right? This is what they were focused on in that video. So this is what I'm going to focus on now. Now, most of the data that we can get from CMHC, starts and completions, starts is a little more current, but they don't have all of 2024. So it's going to be up to 2023 right now. But it's not a big deal. It doesn't really matter. It's just showing you the difference between then and now. And this is very interesting. And I put this out on X this week, and there's people making excuses why, and talking about why. But the historical average length of construction in months by dwelling type. Now, this is all dwelling types. This would be apartments, detached, semi-detached, everything. In census metropolitan area. So all of these are in areas with 10,000, population of 10,000 or more. So it has 90% of the places in Canada, but we'll talk about that in a second. So again, majority of the housing starts are in here because this is how they report. I would have chosen to have them all, but they don't give me that option. So back in 1995, it took 7.2 months to build the average house. I did put actually a chart out on X this week, and I talked about just detached, and that was 5 months for detached back then, and 11 months now to build the average detached home. So a lot longer, double the time. Now, this is all property types, so the average time now is 19.3 months. Now, we do a lot of condos now that take years to complete, but still, they did condos back then, they did apartments back then. 7.2 months, so more than double. Like, this is 2.5 times longer it takes to build the average house in Canada. And of course, that costs more, just the time and the people involved in that deal. And this is why prices went up. So we're becoming less efficient at building homes because it's become more complex. And it's not the homes, they're not that complex, because vehicles have become more complex, more technological, and they're building those quicker than they used to back in the 90s, and better quality too. But homes are the opposite. Homes are taking longer. They're a little bit more advanced, but generally speaking, they're still using wood. I'd like to say wood, but they use a lot of OSB and whatnot. But they use wood and some bricks and wiring and stuff. It's very basic stuff. But again, you have the permitting, you have the inspections, and all these things. Actually, correction, this does not include permitting, but of course there would be inspections in this time frame. Next, we have the historical inventory of completed and unabsorbed homeowner and condominium units by dwelling type. So again, this is all dwelling types, all areas more than 10,000 people. And this is unabsorbed, so they're built, but nobody has bought them or closed on them, either or. So yeah, you see there, it bottomed out last time in what, 2001, 2002. And we did bottom out in 2022. We were absorbing all of these units. They were being purchased, or they were pre-construction. They already purchased. But now look, it's on its way up. And if you were to see 2024 numbers, I'm sure that would go even higher. So we have a lot of units that are not getting absorbed, a lot of available units out there. And maybe that's because people couldn't close on these. And I don't know if they're included in this data. If you couldn't close, I think they might consider that absorbed. But anyway, we do have a lot more unabsorbed units that are completed. So this next chart here is something that nobody really talks about. They don't talk about the stat normally. So this is the historical under construction inventory by dwelling type. Again, all dwelling types in all the areas that it allows here. Now this is crazy because this is every unit that's under construction. And so there's 360,000 units right now, or as of 2023 in Canada, that are under construction, that haven't been completed. But we have, say, 200,000 starts in a year, but only 180,000 completions, because a lot of those take years. So it's taking longer to complete these units. So we're piling up. So we have 350,000 units that could be completed at some point that are not included in 2025 starts. They're not included in completions at this point, but they're out there. And that number, look what it used to be back in 1995. We had, 50,000. So we have a massive amount of uncompleted inventory right now in Canada. And one thing I want to notice or check out here on the next chart, or my next circle here, is look at this area here. So this area is, of course, after 2007, 2008, and a lot of the builders stopped building. And of course, those completions start to get absorbed, and those numbers go down. So we're seeing it level off now, and yeah, we're going to see that inventory get absorbed over time, not because it's a great deal. I actually did a little analysis here on the time frame. So from 1995 it was the lowest. Again, this it coordinates with the video, so it's very interesting. That video is at the low point, and they talked about that in the video of construction. So from 1995 was the low point to the high point in 2007 or so. It was 12 years it took for the historical inventory, the construction inventory to increase, and until it started to turn around and drop back off because we had a recession and the great financial crisis and whatever else. This time, it's been 13 years, and of course, you could pretty accurately say that this inventory is starting to turn around again. And so, yeah, we're on this cycle of, again, historical trends, right? We're seeing these timelines, and a lot of people say, there's 17 years in cycles for the complete cycle. And yeah, we're seeing this here again. So again, just another thing to justify where we are in the market right now. And we have the historical absorbed homeowner and condominium units by dwelling type, all metropolitan areas. And yeah, it's kind of funny because they have 200,000 completions in Canada a year approximately lately, and 120,000 of them are actually absorbed and closed. So we're seeing these numbers that, yeah, we're building 200,000 homes, but a lot of them are sitting vacant and they haven't actually been sold, or they haven't been closed on. And when you saw the peak there last time in 2008, there was way more homes getting absorbed into the economy than now, and we have way more people, which is crazy. So that was a pretty interesting one too. And deciphering this data is really cool, because when you first look at it, it means nothing, and you really have to think about what's actually happening. So here we have the historical percent of homeowner and condo units absorbed at completion by dwelling type. So this is a percentage-based thing. And yeah, it looked like it almost got to 90% there in 2021 and 2022, probably record highs for what we have here in this data. It actually was record highs, but of course that turned around. There's less places getting absorbed at completion. And just to, again, correlate with what the rest of the data showed us, this is percentage-based. And here are the overall historical completions by dwelling type. As I said, 187,630 in 2023. If you look at the whole data, including rural areas that are not included, to be over 200,000. But again, they only do the major areas in here. But again, this is 90% of the data. Compared with 1995 was 77,700. And if you look at the peak before that, 1990, it was 140,000. But yeah, so we've completed a lot more than we used to. And of course, we have a higher population, which we're going to look at next year. So 1995, I know this wasn't the peak, but 1995, they had 29.3 million people, and they were building 77,000 homes. And now we have in 2023 we have 40.8 million people, and I think it went up to 41.5 in 2024. So not that far off, but again, we're using the latest complete data set that we have. And when you break that down towards, comparing the two, 1995 to now, that was in 1995, they built one home for every 377 Canadians. So, if you compare just that number, you say, well, that's not enough homes, because now they're building or completing one home for every 217 Canadians, and we have a housing crisis. And back then, they were building less homes per capita in 1995, and nobody wanted to buy them. Again, this is the point of this video. This is because of the sentiment and the overall outlook in the market and the uncertainty that all the Canadians had back then. So one thing I put out this week was our 1995 will be in 2026 or 2027 based on these timelines. And I want to know what you think in the comments. Do you think that we're headed for a 90s style downturn? And do you think that these numbers are accurate and in the timeline where we are? A lot of people comment say, well, you said the crash is coming in 2025. No, I've never said the crash is coming in 2025. If you've watched every video and every forecast, I say buying opportunities start at the end of 2024 into 2025. That's when it starts, and we're well into this correction right now. But we're going to see our 1995, where they're going to be making videos like they did from the CBC back in 1995, is going to be between 2026 and 2027. And people are not going to be excited about the market then. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comments. And until next week, I'll see you then.